You are the holy grail, the Magdalene. Woman, no need to search any longer. The priest is...
Welcome to the Woman Arising podcast, hosted by Cathy Hartenstein and Zeffi Devi, where we elevate and celebrate inspiring women on the rise. In this podcast, we talk to women from all walks of life about their soul's journey, the obstacles they overcame, and how they embody their feminine power. We hope to elevate women's place in the world, showcase their contributions, and provide inspiration for all women to rise to their fullest potential. Today, our guest is Melanie Ryan, author and founder of the Golden Shadow Method and Ancient Wisdom Today. She is an intuitive psychotherapist, Buddhist teacher, and metaphysician. With her spiritual awareness, Melanie helps others transform. She shares ancient wisdom to raise the vibration of the collective consciousness and restore sanity to our modern world. Her mission is to create quality education and healing opportunities that restore a healthy and positive connection to community, nature, human virtues, and consciousness. Welcome, Melanie. It's our true pleasure to have you here today. We are excited to hear about all of the interesting work you do and the many ways you have used ancient wisdom and methods to heal and empower others.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful intro. Thank you. So excited to be here, and hello to everyone that's listening.
I'm so glad we're doing this and just bringing that energy forth for you and for the women to hear us. I think it's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. I was thinking about woman arising.
And how do you feel about that? And, what it makes you feel and, go with the emotional, or not even the emotional, but what is the first word that it came up, for you when you heard woman arising? Absolutely.
Yeah. So woman arising, when I first heard it and I sat and meditated and, I allow whatever to come up from within. And the first word was mother. And it was mother arising. And, for me, because, this is about sharing my soul's journey as well. For me, mother is so important because as a young baby, I was abandoned by my mother. And I was 2.5, and she was gone for many months. And when I started to do my own work around healing the mother wound, I realized that my mother had a mother wound, and her mother had a mother wound, and my great-grandmother had a mother wound. And beyond that, I don't know what else. I don't know about my great-great-grandmother, but I can kind of guess that this energy, has been in my lineage on my mother's side for a long time. And so my soul is here to actually learn how to not abandon myself, right? To really be loyal and loving toward myself. And as a result of the mother wound, there was a lot of aggressive feminine energy in my lineage. And so competition and just a lack of nurturing and even a lack of saying, I love you. And so I didn't grow up with that mother loving, soft, feminine, nurturing, what can I get you to eat, or what can I get for you, that like sort of nurturing, nourishing mother energy. I grew up on canned food, like boxed frozen foods. My mother cooked a little bit, but it just is there. It's an energy in my family line, which has healed now since my son passed. My son died suddenly of an abdominal aortic aneurysm. And it's been almost 2 years, so it's still very fresh. But his presence in my life healed that energy so much, even through my family line. It's brought all of the women in my family together, and this beautiful, soft, loving, we say I love you all the time now. So that's what came to me when I was sitting with Mother Arising. See, I just slipped and said it. Woman arising to me meant mother arising. That soft, loving, nurturing energy.
Yeah, that's really true because, the mother energy is also, it's not just in us, it's also the earth, correct? That's why we call her Mother Earth. And that's what we carry as women. We carry that powerful energy of hers, and we can create that way. Like she creates, she needs just only the sun for her to create this beautiful abundance in the world that she gives us, from the greenery to the water to the birds to the animals to us, because we couldn't live if she didn't create. So this is who we are as women. We are mothers no matter what. We do have children or don't have children. We do carry that energy. And I understand about you healing the mothers within your lineage. That's very powerful. And I know, your son passing away was a very powerful experience for you. I mean, of course, he has all the grief and everything else behind it, but at the same time, he carried so much, and he was just such a powerful young boy when I met him in Greece. And it was just that, hour with him at the dinner.
I've been, sharing, photos of him in Greece and our time in Greece. And, he was homeschooled. So he was very fortunate to be able to travel and go to Greece to learn ancient Greek dream incubation and be a part of a documentary that was being filmed at that time, and learn about mythology and poetry and philosophy. He loved philosophy. But I wanted to say something about when you were talking about the earth, just going back to that, because I've really been contemplating about how earth and heart have the same letters.
Yeah.
And I feel like, Justin's death just broke open my heart. And, at a time when there's a lot of fighting over, politics and health and, are you vegan or carnivore or vaxxed or unvaxxed or Democrat or Republican? Like, there's just so much to fight about and so much fighting. And when my son passed, my family was divided on a lot of things. And then it was just like all of our hearts were broken. And it just didn't matter anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter what we believed, if we had the same beliefs or not, or whether we were vaxxed or not, or Democrat or Republican. There was just only love. And I'm going to get choked up. I'm a little more raw now, and because it's closer to the time of his death, and I'm remembering, where we were in Greece and all that we did. So I'm going to get a little teary this time. But it was just such a pure message of love and unity and family and community. And I feel like, Justin, when he came in, it ignited that mother love that I'd never had in my life before. So strong and so powerful. And it came in at birth, and it really exploded at death. And there's a lot of death on our planet right now. There's a lot of things, happening that I don't know if it's more than usual. It feels like it is. But I do feel like death is a powerful awakening of the heart. I mean, what else can break us down and put us on our knees than to lose a loved one, especially suddenly and unexpectedly? And, I got the initiation of, it's like the mother, effer of initiation, to lose not just my child, but my only child, so there's no grandchildren for me. there's no experiencing any of that. So it's kind of like it stops with me and my husband. And that's, of course, meant to be. But the love that's just been pouring out of me, and reflecting on our relationship of being a mother, I was, brought up to be, businesswoman, which I am, and entrepreneurial. And, I seem to just create businesses left and right and help other people do the same. But that mother energy, like, he brought me back into the home. He went to Montessori, and then he tried public school for 3 months in 5th grade. He was 10 years old. And he just was not cut from this cloth here in the United States. It's like he was a very old soul, always wanted a very simple life, always wanted to just be with family, had his Taekwondo community, his Boy Scout community, and his very tight Montessori friends. But after 4th grade, all the Montessori kids went to different places, but he always kept in touch. And he wanted to try public school, but he just didn't fit in there. He even wrote about it in his book. He wrote an autobiography for 2 years. And he wrote about how unnatural it is for a 10-year-old boy to sit at a desk for 7 hours out of the day. So I brought him home. I had a full-time psychotherapy practice and a huge holistic health center, the largest in the Hudson Valley of New York, and a lot going on. But there was just nothing that I wouldn't do for him. Pulled him out of public school over the Christmas break with no idea what I was going to do. And so we just kind of had faith that it was all going to work out. And we had the most amazing homeschooling experience. I was by his side for 6 years, starting at the end of 2018. He was homeschooled, and he taught me how fun education can be. And learning together as a mother and child, learning together. And like we took Spanish together with a guy in Chile online, during the pandemic, we took some really fun online courses, and we learned organic gardening together. And we built raised beds in the backyard and started growing our own food during the pandemic, and wilderness skills, and, all the things that he did just also brought out my true self. I was like, well, I love gardening, and I love, all these things, learning different languages and going to Greece with him. So it brought this very special experience out that I'm so grateful for, because now that he's gone, not in physical body, he's not gone. He lets us know that. He brought out the love. And he did that with everyone that he met. He just had this way of keeping things simple, and that it was just all about family, and it was all about love. So I feel like in Woman Arising, like we're really the glue. I feel like my grandmother was always the one who was calling everyone, what's going on? What's going on? And then I would hear about my cousins from her, because she connected to everyone in the family. And then when my grandmother passed, my mother's mother, I had no idea what was going on with my cousins anymore. So it was like coming back home, being with my child, learning together, cooking together, playing together, and having this bond it was why it was so hard also, because he was my left arm. Almost like I didn't know who I was without him. Yeah. That's how close we were.
That's an extraordinary journey. And I love this idea that sometimes this tragedy and this death like breaks open the heart, and that sense of love and the healing that also comes with the hurt, like that is really powerful. And even the sense of Women Arising being so connected to the mother, because when I think of the divine feminine, I think of the great mother, right? And even how so much energy has been suppressing of that divine feminine energy and that great mother, sort of historically, cosmically, and that breaking that up and that connection with earth and heart and love, like it's a beautiful way of processing, of understanding, of embracing, that is such a great thing that you were able to have that healing in that way, because I think that's a beacon for people to understand. It sounds like somehow, I know in the work you do with the golden shadow and the ancient wisdom, and like there's a knowing in you, like that you went on this path even before this happened to you, that I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey and like, how did you discover that? I know that you said in your childhood that you had that mother wound, but what got you on that path, that like when this happened, which is a very challenging and, heartbreaking thing, that you were able to go on this path of grief and healing for yourself?
Yeah, so I believe that my family carried an ancestral wound on my mother's side from the Holocaust. And I met family members, that had the tattooed numbers on their arms. And, there was always this like fear of another Holocaust in the family line. That energy would be talked about at the holidays, and it just never left. So it was sort of passed down from generation to generation. And I had a lot of anxiety that I don't think was all mine. And I would suffer from panic attacks. And some of it was my own, fears of like public speaking and things like that. I always wanted to become a psychotherapist. I knew since I was 15, and even when I was younger, there was a mystical side to me that, always stared at the moon, always, played with palm reading and tarot cards. And even recently, I just remembered how when I was younger, I used to play the game with other kids of, guess a number from 1 to 100, or think of a number from 1 to 100, and I would guess it, which 1 out of 100 numbers. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty good. So I've recently been contemplating these intuitive psychic abilities that we all have, that they're natural to us. And I wanted to probably step into that, but because the culture suppresses that, my guidance counselor in high school didn't say, like, you could go to college to become a mystic, you know? And even Carl Jung's work was suppressed, and it was more Freud, right? Because Carl Jung was the soul doctor and talked about the unconscious being a spiritual place. And so all the spirituality was like out of the books, out of the curriculums. So I went the route of psychotherapist and really struggled with panic attacks, didn't want to raise my hand in high school, didn't want to raise my hand in college. And finally, in my early 20s, after I got my master's degree and started working, I was working in hospitals with schizophrenics. And it was really coming to a head, my panic attacks, because a psychiatrist actually pulled me aside. And he said, I see you're struggling in team meetings when you speak. Have you ever done anything? And, of course, medication was never an option for me. It was just not in my belief system. I don't judge other people who decide to do that, but it just never felt right to me. So I started going to spiritual workshops and yoga classes, and I found a yoga teacher who was married to a Tibetan Buddhist teacher. And through that yoga, I decided to sign up for a year-long yoga teacher training. And it weaved in Tibetan Buddhism. And at the same time, I met a shaman. So it was all, it's like when the student is ready, everybody appears. It was like all these teachers suddenly were coming into my life. And I was very open and interested in all of it. So I worked with a shaman privately for 10 years. I worked with a Tibetan Buddhist teacher of the Shambhala tradition, which is founded by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. He was a Tibetan master that actually brought Buddhism to the West in the early 1970s. So that's been my path. I became a Buddhist teacher in that lineage after about 12 years of study, which takes a really long time in the Buddhist tradition to become a meditation teacher. It's not a weekend workshop. You have to really work on yourself and cleanse and purify your shadow, basically, which is why I brought that into the Golden Shadow Method. Buddha and the shadow is one of the pillars. And it's using meditation, being silent and still and spacious with your eyes open, everything open, not like going anywhere, but just being here. And there's such a power in that it actually brings up dark shadow material and golden shadow material. So we can have amazing creative visions and things come up when we sit in silence and stillness. So I always want to make sure people understand there's a golden shadow. There's a whole storage house of positive energy that is just back there waiting for us to open the door to it.
Would you mind defining golden shadow? Because I love that term, but it's a new term to me.
So the shadow is Carl Jung's term for the unconscious. It's all the things that we suppress. And there is a gigantic storehouse of things that we suppress. And so what's in the shadow is both dark and light. And Carl Jung even said that. He said, and I write about it in my book, I quote him, and I quote his main student, Maria Louise von Franz, about how the shadow gets this negative connotation, and cleansing and purifying the dark shadow, which are low frequencies like fear and jealousy or aggression, grief, shame, blame, those kinds of low frequencies all live in our psyche. And those need to be transmuted, right, into a higher frequency and then integrated. The golden shadow are our positive qualities that get suppressed, right? So like I actually, when I was in college, wanted to become an artist. I was going to a college where it was one of the top art schools in the country, and my roommate was an artist, and I always had this love of art. But there I was with my big fat psychology books. I was like, hey, I want to be an artist. And, there was no support for that. I'm not paying for that, right? There's this fear, right? So we are conditioned to deny certain parts of ourselves out of fear. And, it was understandable. Your parents want you to be successful. They want security for you. But when we start to live from our truth, our authenticity, there really is no stopping us. So the golden shadow is going into the light. And Carl Jung said it's the entire unconscious. The shadow is the entire unconscious. It's not just the dark stuff. It's the light stuff too. And so in my programs, we right away, day one, we get into our psychic abilities and the art. It's shifting into our heart, which is into love, into a high frequency, right? And then becoming intuitives and channels from that high frequency, and becoming intuitive with our art and letting the unconscious come out. Carl Jung called it external active imagination, where you can draw things and they're coming from your unconscious, right? My son did it actually 3.5 years before he passed. He wrote a creative writing story that completely accurately describes the events around his death. 3 years before, 3.5 years before, he was 11 years old. And he got 5 hits. Every sentence he wrote was a hit. And so Carl Jung knew this. He knew active imagination, that imagination is a psychic ability. And so in the golden shadow is our psychic abilities. We suppress them, right? We push them away. We don't really develop them I'm talking as a collective. Some of us do. Some of us have chosen to really step into that. but we all have it. And my son had it. My son was very intuitive and psychic, where I'm really just kind of putting that all together now. He had 2 dreams before he died that he told me, Mom, I had a dream last night that I died. And at first I was like, oh, it just means that you're changing. You grew, a whole foot in the last year, like you're transforming. Death just means, change and transformation. But then 3 days later, he came down and he said, Mom, I had another dream last night that I died.
Mm.
And then 3 days later, he was dead. So that's called precognitive dreaming, right? Where the future is coming through the unconscious. If you're very open, right? A lot of people dream. They have precognitive dreams, or they dream at night and the unconscious is coming through. And it can show you sometimes things that will save your life. Or we have experiences where we hear a voice inside us that saves our life. So being psychic is actually hidden in the golden shadow. We're naturally all psychic because we're all spiritual beings. So how many of us are suppressing that super intelligence that can really enhance your life and even save your life sometimes?
That is fascinating. And I really see that connection, because the concept that the unconscious or the shadow is everything that maybe isn't on the surface, that isn't operating in our conscious state. And that psychic ability, that intuitive, that just knowing in ourselves, that's also part of it. And so there's almost, I'm bringing it back to some of the stuff we discussed, an unearthing, of what's happening. And your son just sounds like such an extraordinary being. And it makes sense in a way, because your life's work here is about some of this way of seeing the world through that light, right? That the son that you're raising is very capable of that, or very in tune with that, and having those energies. And even to break open the heart in everything that he did, and even in his death, that's pretty extraordinary. I am curious, part of when we talk about, women rising, a lot of women, they feel a little bit trapped in their lives, or don't feel as seen in the world, right? And in the work that you've done, or the things that you've discovered, have you seen where, women are maybe suppressing some of these things, or aren't being seen as vividly in the world? Is that part of your work? Have you experienced that as a woman?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with trauma and addiction since the start of my career. And I started when I was 22. So I was kind of still a baby. I was still doing a lot of healing work myself. And, what I learned about myself, and I'm very authentic with my students, I like to say students, not clients, is that there's a tremendous amount of trauma around infancy. And I was born in 1970. And during that time, there was what's called the Ferber method, right? To let babies cry it out. And so babies were left in the crib and really, truly traumatized, like in terror. When a baby's crying like that, it's not something that you want to do, to just let them cry. And I was Ferberized, and as a result of that, we get very disconnected from ourselves. I work a lot around healing, shadow integration is what Carl Jung called it, but like shamans call it soul retrieval, right? When we come into this human form, and if you're lucky enough to have a pleasant birth, which most people are not, right? At least 70 to 80% of us have a pretty traumatic birth. We're pulled out, suctioned and smacked and hung upside down and thrown onto like a metal table and weighed. And, we're learning, now how to birth in a way that really Indigenous people did. And, trusted their bodies and things. So I was one of those babies. I was pulled out by forceps. My mother was knocked out. She doesn't even remember giving birth to me. There was no breastfeeding. There was no skin to skin. And then I was ferberized. And then my mother worked, and she left for a while, but then she came back, but she still worked. And so there was this abandonment, right? And so when I talk about abandonment, and I work with people around triggers, and their triggers are leading them to the original wound, which always goes back to this infant version of us that was traumatized, left in the crib, crying, feeling completely unsafe in the world, unseen, unheard, can't trust anyone to come when we need them. Because a baby is, when they're crying and crying and crying and no one's coming, we learn to just stop crying and shut down. And that leaves an imprint in our psyche. It actually disconnects us from ourselves. Our root chakra is shattered. The root chakra is completely shattered. We don't feel connected to ourselves. And then that develops into all kinds of manifestations of trauma, whether it's addiction or identity issues, or feeling lost, like can't make decisions or decide who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing with my career. So it's beyond just feeling seen. It's really on a very spiritual level, a disconnection from ourselves, where I teach on what's called soul fragmentation. And it's really a psyche fragmentation. We disconnect from ourselves and we leave when we don't feel safe. The second time my son told me that he had a dream that he died, I experienced terror. The first time I was like, oh, no big deal. Second time, I froze, I blanked out, I left my body. Because my soul knew what was coming, the trauma of, what happened to him. So I left my body, and of course I had a metaphysical session where I was reconnected. My heart chakra was healed, my root chakra was healed. So when we start to see and understand that we're these energy beings, we're these spiritual beings, and we've all experienced trauma. Every single one of us. If you're human, you're here to experience these low vibrations and to learn from them and to find the light, to find, there's meaning and purpose in our suffering. It's not for nothing. We're here to learn, right? So I feel like it's a woman issue, it's a men issue, it's a human issue, to recognize who we truly are as spiritual beings and what trauma does to us. And my Transmuting Triggers book goes way deeper than any psychological method out there, because I'm working in the psyche using active imagination to go in and be with these, infant versions of us, wounded versions of us. And there's several different wounded versions of us that we need to work with, but help them feel safe, gain their trust, and integrate, transmute those dark, low frequencies into higher ones and integrate those. And that's when people start to feel like they can move forward, they can reach their full potential, they're not being sabotaged by the unconscious.
That's really amazing, because I feel that the first chakra, that's where all the issues lie. And even in the Hindu tradition, it takes a long time to open up that chakra, because if you don't, then the rest of the chakras are not working, correct? You need to start from the bottom, from the lower vibrations to rise. Otherwise, there's no reason. We call it here in Sedona spiritual bypass, love and light. But how can we get grounded? How can we discover that powerful energy as women? Of course, men too. It's not that we're separating them, but women has this channel inside her body that she can just bring that vibration all the way to her crown and really connect with this powerful spiritual feminine energy of the mother, and men can do it as well. But I just want to ask you, the first time you actually connected to this powerful feminine energy within yourself. I'm sure you're going to say it was the birth, or you're going to say it was when, you first hold your son in your hands. But before that, because for you to bring such an amazing being to actually choose you as a mother, there was something woken up there before he came in. Do you remember any of those times, or any one time, or something that you can tell us about?
Yeah, I was doing the yoga teacher training, and I was doing the Buddhist practice and the shamanic work. And I knew that I had a very strong mother, energy that was coming naturally through me. I would always get like the Empress card in the tarot. And, it was always this very strong mother energy. And I was learning how to be my own mother. Like my work was around how to love myself, how to be there for myself. And my husband was also doing the work. And, my husband and I, it was magical when we started dating. We tell this story, we laugh sometimes about there was this magnetic energy pulling us together. And there's a funny story of when we were dating. It was the first time he came over, and I had a bowl of grapes, and he was sitting on the couch, probably about 4-5 feet away from me. And he was like, throw me a grape. And I threw it, and it went right into his mouth. And then he laughed. He was like, do it again. And I did it again. And I did it again. And I did it again. And then he was like, get away from me. It was kind of scary, like what was going on. And I feel like the three of us, me and my husband, Andy, and Justin, this was not our first time together. And my husband and I, we started doing spiritual retreats together, and we were growing together. And he wasn't really on his soul's path yet. And he shifted actually when Justin was 1 year old. I believe that we bring in a lot of energy from past lives too. So it's not just what I did in this life. But I think before Justin came in, it was a few years before I had made the decision to walk the spiritual path. And my husband made the decision to walk the spiritual path. And I think because of that union between us and the power of that together is what brought in someone like Justin. What was funny, when I was pregnant, we knew we were having a boy. We decided to know ahead of time. And I said, okay, let's for the next week just contemplate, top 10 boy names that we like, right? And within 24 hours, we came back the next day like, I knew it. And then Andy knew it. And he said, I don't need the whole week. I already got it. And I'm like, no, I got it. I got it. And I said, let's both write it down. And we both wrote down Justin.
Wow.
It's been magical since the beginning. And it was magic with me and Andy when we met. We were terrified of each other. And he even broke up with me at one point and said, I don't know if I want to get married. I don't know if I want children. And I think his soul was like, do I really want to go through all this? Right? Because the soul knows.
Yeah.
And so he could have made another choice and left, but he came back. And we know that we've got soul contracts together. So I think that our choice to be together is, I believe Justin is one of my ancestors that came back to actually help us during a time of darkness, so.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, having those experiences as women, because it's the knowingness that we have. And we still feel like, all these books out there saying, oh, you have to find your twin flame, you whatever. I believe, and down the line, I will write a book. It's the divine equal that brings that pure connection to the woman. Once she knows herself, once she understands who she is, her equal shows up. It's not the one is going to fulfill pieces of herself. It's the one that comes in and supports her and makes her as knowing who she is of this earth. And also we do that for the men, like you said, this magnet that brings this energy together. And yes, they can run away, or we can even run away in the relationship. Correct? It's not just the masculine that does, but then you think about it and the magnet will bring you back together, because you have in front of you a whole being that is exactly fulfilled for who he is and who she is. And then that is the mother that holds us. The mother holds that energy. That the other struggles, I know we have to go through them, but I think once you have the knowingness as a feminine, then this powerful being can come through you, or even help you. Even if the being doesn't come, if a kid doesn't come, it can help you in your life, as long as you're full of who you are. No one is going to fulfill you. You have to fulfill yourself. And I think that's the power of the feminine. And that's what I mean. Divine equal to me is like, it's been in my conscious for a very long time, and I struggle with all the other stuff. Do you feel that that's what you got when you were creating Justin? I'm sure. Like, you, in front of you is you equal. It was like, your husband is the one, it's exactly like you, but in the male form.
Metaphysically speaking, I very much believe in vibration, and like attracts like. And my husband and I were deeply in love. And it was, when we looked at each other, no one else existed. And I believe that that love was so strong that it brought in such a powerful force of love through Justin. And that's really how I kind of think about it. I feel very, very blessed. I wouldn't change a thing. If I knew that it was going to go down the way it went down, I still wouldn't change a thing. And I did not Ferberize my son. I was told to, but I broke it. Like, I just, you feel it. Like, I think every mother feels when their baby cries. You feel it through every cell in your body. It's like this instinct to go. Right. But I've even since then, I have a naturopathic doctor who's actually become like my best friend. She was part of our family and is still. She's Peruvian.
Mm.
And so I learned, through traveling to Guatemala, studying with elders there, ancient shamanic practices. And last year I went to Bhutan. And her wisdom as an anthropologist as well, she was talking about how babies need to be attached. She's got 2 daughters. She carries her 2-year-old, breastfeeds her 2-year-old still. There's no stroller. There's those baby carriers. Mm-hmm. And in Guatemala, it was the same. And in Bhutan, it was the same. Way up in the mountains, it's the mothers with the grandmothers and the children are always held. And I feel like we have a deep need to be held, because as I'm doing the work that I'm doing with trauma, with people around triggers, bringing people back into their heart. And one of the techniques is to, become an intuitive and a channel through your heart, through the feeling of love. And I struggled with this at first too. I could think about love. I couldn't feel it. So there's that disconnection, which is starting from infancy. Like, we can turn this around if we start with holding our babies, right? No separation, that they can feel love, not trauma, not disconnection, but love. And so I think women need to really come together to support each other, to find ways to simplify our lives. I had to, when I, had to come home to homeschool Justin, so much had to change. There was no more manicures and pedicures. Every expense that wasn't necessary just was gone. And simplified our lives to make it possible for me to be home with him. I still worked part-time online, but not everyone can do that, and I understand that. But we have been conditioned into, the big house, the expensive car, the closet full of clothes and shoes and like all these things that we think we can't afford to be home with our children. But we can make it happen. And I help people through Buddhist teachings how to simplify your life, how to manage money in a responsible way, how to live in alignment with your heart, right? I have so many women that they want to be home with their kids, but they can't figure it out. And I'm like, all right, I'm here. Let's do it. Let's figure it out, right? And sometimes it requires big changes. But it's from the ground up. It's from that root chakra up. It has to start with, how are we there for our babies, right? And for me, because I was abandoned, it's like it's become one of my main teachings because, of course, I attract other women who have a mother wound and abandonment issues. So it's been, breaking that cycle, and then they're able to be there and in their heart for their kids. And now we have a new generation of kids growing up that feel safe and loved. Justin wrote about that in his autobiography, about how he felt safe and loved. And that was a very different experience than mine. So in a way, I feel like I've done my job.
That is a great advice to give to women. That's a great way of seeing their life in a different way of what the world is showing us to be. And thank you for that. It was my next question, but I didn't even need to ask it.
There's so much power, right? Yeah. The power of love. I think of the feminine power of being the glue that holds the family together, of being there for the child and creating that love and safety, because you're creating a new human being and you're creating the future. And we know wounded people wound people, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So if you have infants feeling traumatized and abandoned, they're already wounded and now they feel lost and disconnected. And then they go out there and they're more likely to use drugs or be aggressive. And so mother and in indigenous tribes, the mother is the most powerful.
Exactly.
Because they know that that's the future. Mothers, that we create that love and that safety. There's no other hug like a mother's hug.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really important. I think sometimes it gets overlooked, right? And we don't give it that attention and space and acknowledgement of that power. And so it then goes back into the shadows, right? And bringing that forward. And in some ways, I'm really equating the golden shadow with the mother in this conversation a lot, because it is like connected to love, is what you're saying. It's this source of love. It is our experience of love on all these different levels. And that golden shadow is releasing a lot of that love as well, bringing it forward, I guess is the way I should.
Absolutely. Love, unconditional love.
And exactly, in purest form in some ways.
It's definitely in the golden shadow, and it's a deep remembering of what it feels like to truly be loved. Yeah. And that I am finding is foreign to people.
I think you're right. And it's just so beautiful that you are helping people connect to that, and also sharing your very personal story about the things that you've gone through to really know it on a very, very deep level and hold that space for other people, even in the place of the mother wound that you started with, and then the loss of your only child, So there's a lot of complexity in your experience of mother and motherhood and all of it. And yet what I've heard through this beautiful interview is that love is the force that just keeps being revealed and revealed and revealed to you. And that your son cracked that open on so many levels. And then, you were able to heal not just things for yourself and your family, but like your lineage. I mean, that's extremely powerful story. And I kind of want to end here because it feels so
Yeah.
complete to me.
And my
But-
mother and I do say I love you every day now to
It's
each other.
wonderful. And it's a great reminder. Like, even I live with my mother and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to go hug her after this. But I really would love to hear how people can get in touch with you, because I think this work is significant. I think your perspective is powerful. I think the journey that you went on to, really hone the things that you are developing and sharing, and the students that you're serving, I feel would resonate with a lot of people. So how can people connect with you?
Yeah, thank you. They can find me on the internet, right? Everyone's on the internet now. Ancientwisdomtoday.com. And I will be launching a new website, goldenshadowmethod.com. And if I can plug, I just taught at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. It's a world-renowned holistic health center and healing place, beautiful place in the Catskill Mountains. And the workshop was just beautiful and magical and full of love and light, but also very grounding. I'll be teaching again next year at Omega, the Golden Shadow Method, in August of 2026. And I'll also be leading, we have 3 spots left for a trip to Greece in 2026, in June of 2026. So that's all on the website, Ancient Wisdom Today. And I am on Facebook, Melanie Ryan, and you can friend request me. And on Instagram, golden.shadow.method is where you can find me there. So thank you so much for everything. It's always a pleasure to be with the two of you, and I hope that we can be together in person and hug.
It was such a great opportunity to interview you, not once, but twice. Our first interview, unfortunately, had some technical difficulties. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. And I feel like I learned so much, and I really recommend that everybody check this out. I think it's extremely powerful work.
Thank you.
It would be great for the people to come to Greece, and then I can see you and hug you again. That would be
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Thanks, everyone.
really amazing. Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Thank you for tuning in to Woman Arising, where we celebrate the resilience, wisdom, and power of women on the rise. Remember, when women rise, we all rise. If you're ready to embark on your journey of empowerment, sign up for our mailing list at womenarising.com and join our community of strong, inspiring women. To connect with Zeffi Devi and ignite your inner fire, visit zeffidevi.com and sign up to get your free tantric meditation. Let Zeffi illuminate your path, helping you discover the magic and power that reside within you. To connect with Cathy Hartenstein and claim your spectacularness, visit createmorebliss.com and sign up for a free 30-minute consult call where she can help you break through your emotional blocks to success. Let Cathy be your guide on this journey of self-discovery and empowerment. Thank you for being a part of the Woman Arising community. Together, let's continue to uplift, inspire, and empower women everywhere. Until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and keep embracing the divine feminine power that resides within you.
You are the Holy Grail, the Magdalene. Woman, no need to search any longer.